Simpsons flashback episodes are some of the most interesting in television. They not only tell the story of how our favourite family came to be, but allow the writers to parody specific eras of American culture and phenomena that wouldn't make as much sense in a present day setting. But being a long runner and staying set in the present day of whenever it's on has negatively affected the flashback episodes. It used to be novel seeing stories set in years prior to the show's own debut, but now, most of them are set after the show started, no matter how many years they go back, creating an ongoing and worsening paradox. One of the most infamous latter-day flashbacks is That 90s Show from season 19. Not only because it's just a bad episode, but because it took the risk of setting a flashback to Homer and Marge's dating days in the 90s. The one where they meet, The Way We Was set in 1974, and the one where they get married, I Married Marge, was set in 1980 and 1981. But by 2008, an episode set in between those two couldn't be set in the previously implied time period without Homer and Marge being way too old to have grade school kids. This wouldn't be so bad if the 90s weren't such a well-trodden period for The Simpsons. Most everyone would say the show peaked somewhere in the middle of the decade. And while the episodes produced then are mostly timeless, they still joked about many timely issues and trends, including post-Chernobyl criticism of nuclear power, pre-rating system limits on television content, cable piracy, America's position in the automobile business, Michael Jackson's unsteady popularity, their own popularity, the country music craze, overpriced phone calls, nicotine patches, free goo, sexism in the toy industry, dying interest in space exploration, Euro Disneyland's slow start, collect calls, hogs, ballooning movie budgets, violent video games, shifting opinions on founding fathers, Disney's copyright fetish, resurgence in anti-immigration sentiment, the contemporary rock scene, early hipsters, Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, Bob Dole, Silicon Valley, The X-Files, total radicalness, rising gay acceptance, women in the military, internet startups, cars getting bigger, the don't ask, don't tell policy, anime causing seizures, Ritalin, Y2K, the Furby craze. I could keep going. The point of this video isn't to complain about that 90s show's existence, it's to determine what exact point in the 90s it's set in. That was hard to figure out, because with prior flashbacks, they had specific years stated on screen or were heavily implied to be set in one specific point in time or another. That 90s show didn't bother to do that, so grabbed a bunch of references from all throughout the decade and stuffed them in a pot. The only thing concrete is that the bulk of it can't be set in 1998 and 1999, because Bart is 10 and this episode aired in 2008. But even this is contradicted by some references. I'm not going to let the episode win, so I decided to go through it and find every dateable reference I could and determine the most likely year it would have been set. When introducing the setting, Homer says the Iraq War was over, a joke about how what we now call the Iraq War was ongoing when this episode aired. He's most likely referring to the Gulf War, which ended on February 28, 1991. He also mentions Matt Groening created Futurama, which premiered on Fox on March 28, 1999, but it had been in development since around 1995. So far so good. The flashback starts with a Melrose Place homage, a soap opera on Fox which began on July 8, 1992 and ended on May 24, 1999. It peaked in viewership with its second season from 1993 to 1994. Not long after that came Friends. Marge's hairstyle is the Rachel, worn by Jennifer Aniston on Friends from late season 1 in April 6, 1995, phasing it out at the start of season 3 in late 1996. Homer's hairstyle I can't identify, but I'm just saying, if they picked the James from Pokemon hairstyle, this episode would be less hated. Kirk is on a computer using the internet, but Luann cuts his connection by picking up a phone. This sort of dial-up internet became commercially available in 1992 and was superseded by broadband in the early 2000s.
I want to wait until I'm married, or at least really drunk.
I understand. We should follow the lead of today's celebrity role models.
Okay, here we go, the Sonic the Hedgehog billboard. The original Genesis games released from June 1991 to October 18, 1994. This is likely set in that time period when Sega was most aggressive with marketing Sonic. And this is also likely referencing the Sonic Says segments from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, a cartoon that aired across the fall of 1993.
Believe it or not, every year some ignorant kid takes a ride in a clothes dryer just like this one.
This also features Amy Rose, who debuted in Sonic CD, which released that year. However, she has her Dreamcast era design, which was first seen in Sonic Adventure, which released in December 1998, in Japan, months before it hit the States. This is definitely still supposed to be reflecting the Genesis era, but I'm sure Mark Kirkland isn't living this down. Later it's shown that Homer, Lenny, Carl and Lou are in a boy band, and they sing a parody of I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men, which released on July 26, 1994. One of the genres of their band is stated to be hip-hop, which was predominantly popular in the late 80s and early 90s. Marge adds that Kevin Costner's career is in decline, with Waterworld, released in the summer of 1995, usually pointed to by critics as the start of that, but The Postman, released in Christmas 1997, is inferred and blamed. Abe has shown to have a laser tag business, a recreation which became public in 1984, but I guess was at its most popular in the 90s? Abe markets it as a fad, but I grew up with it in the 2000s. At this fancy old college, Comic Book Guy says The Lord of the Rings can never be filmed. The Peter Jackson movies, released in the early 2000s, entered production in 1997. At this college, Marge has a tutor called Stefan August. For the voice, Hank Azaria based his performance on Philip Seymour Hoffman, whose breakout role was Scent of a Woman, a movie set at a prep school which premiered in December 1992. Also from that year, Homer's seen reading The Bridges of Madison County, which released in 1992 and hit the New York Times bestseller list that August. He has a very different reaction to it than Marge once had.
This book sucks so much!
While watching TV, Homer references 3 different episodes of the 90s sitcom Seinfeld: The Contest, which premiered on November 18, 1992, the No Soup for You episode, which premiered on November 2nd, 1995, and The Sponge, which premiered on December 7th, 1995. He's also seen drinking Zima, an alcoholic beverage by Coors, which hit the market in 1993. It was actually discontinued a couple months after this episode aired. I'm sure the Zima people hate this episode for kicking them out of business. He also has Salve. Couldn't find anything about Salve being especially popular in the 90s, so I'll assume Homer was influenced by the Ren and Stimpy episode To Salve and Salve Not, which premiered on November 20th, 1993. There you go, Matt. I gave you your Ren and Stimpy reference for you. Time for the start of the licensed songs, with the semi-Sonic song Closing Time playing while Homer and Marge are in bed, which released on March 10th, 1998. And the music is only going to get stranger from here. Homer is seen basically inventing the genre of grunge.
Kurt, it's Marvin. Your cousin, Marvin Cobain. You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this.
This cannot be accurate to history. It was a sound of Seattle artists that developed in the mid-80s. It was the Seattle sound before it became grunge, and that didn't happen until it went mainstream when Nirvana released the album Nevermind on September 24th, 1991. I'm not even the biggest grunge fan in the world, this is just basic rock history. It's also just very clear that his band Sadgasm is meant to be a parody of Nirvana, which was active from 1987 to 1994. Homer himself is turned into a reflection of Kurt Cobain, the lead vocalist, songwriter, and guitarist of Nirvana, who against his will became the face of grunge in the early 90s. Sadgasm's songs are so edgy and relatable that it converts a nerd carrying a Bender lunchbox. Now they're just messing with me. A Bender lunchbox. I'm guessing it would have taken a couple months at the minimum for Futurama merchandise to roll out after premiering, so this is just getting more and more anachronistic by the minute. Then we've got a joke about Homer and Marge sorting some stuff as they split up. Homer gets all the stuff that is dated or is going to become dated in the future.
Okay, I'll keep the LPs and you take the CDs. I'll take the typewriter, you take the computer. I'll take the Enron stock, you take the Microsoft stock, and
But it reads more like stuff that's already become dated, except for the last stuff. CDs had already superseded LPs in sales. Personal computers were becoming more popular than typewriters. Only the third one feels specifically timely. Microsoft went from being successful to a technology giant when Windows 95 released on August 24th, 1995, while the energy company Enron is mostly obscure now. Still, they used the 1997 Enron logo, the last one before they went bankrupt on December 2nd, 2001. The last thing they have to split is Cutie Puss, which appears to be a Beanie Baby, a toy brand which launched in 1993 but became a hot commodity towards the end of 1995. And upon the death of Cutie Puss, Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve plays, which released in the UK on June 16, 1997, but not in the US until the following March. Then there's a couple gags about business trends in the decade. Most converted his bar into a cigar bar. There was a cigar boom in the US from roughly fall 1992 to 1997. It didn't end all because of anti-smoking campaigns, but also because of supply shortages. Then we get a quick pan of the American coffee business, which boomed from 1993 onward, and was compounded by the premiere of Friends on NBC on September 22, 1994. Homer starts getting depressed by his fame and addicted to drugs. Kurt Cobain's heroin addiction worsened and his mental health declined across 1992 to 1994, leading up to him taking his life on April 5th, 1994. Homer sees that one of his songs is being parodied by Weird Al Yankovic, who also released a parody of a Nirvana song on April 3rd, 1992, and is depicted with glasses before his laser eye surgery in 1998. Marge hears about all this on MTV News, presented by Kurt Loder. MTV News launched in 1987, and this is probably commenting on the gradual shift away from music video focus the network went through across the 90s. But there is a music video playing, and it's got some references. Homer's song is Margarine, a parody of Glycerine by Bush, which released on November 14, 1994. The music video director is David Merkin, who was the showrunner for The Simpsons during seasons 5 and 6, most of his episodes airing from October 14, 1993 to September 24, 1995. There's a shot of crash test dummies that might be invoking the crowd of teenagers from the Smells Like Teen Spirit music video, but it could also be invoking the Crash Test Dummies, a Canadian alt-rock band formed in 1998, but which reached mainstream success in the 90s. Now, after all this and the relationship is repaired, we've got some jokes wrapping up the decade. Reality shows, which became more popular in the late 90s but exploded in the early 2000s. Britney Spears breaking into pop stardom. She was a child star on the Mickey Mouse Club from 1992 to 1994, but became a bigger success when she released Baby One More Time on September 29, 1998. Apparently presidents can't get worse than Bill Clinton. His reputation took a dive with the Lewinsky scandal, which started on January 17, 1998. The 2000 Summer Olympics are mentioned, which took place in Sydney from September 25th to October 1st, 2000. I can only imagine this was important in the late 90s because the 1998 Winter Olympics would have been in the news. And lastly, the name of the episode itself is a take on That 70s Show, a show on Fox set in the 70s but which premiered on August 23rd, 1998. And this episode, That 90s Show, has nothing to do with the spin-offs of That 70s Show, That 80s Show, or That 90s Show. And with that, I can say this was nonsense. If we look at all the references side by side like this, then the episode has to be set in some bizarro version of the 90s where the premiere of Futurama predates the formation of grunge. But if I had to name a year at gunpoint, my best guess would be 1995, due to the fashion and trends, grunge notwithstanding. Any references to things after 1995 read like sly foreshadowing. And even though it plays music from later in the decade, this is just how Homer and Marge remember the decade. They weren't gonna Google search when Bittersweet Symphony released before telling the story just to make sure it was accurate. Time to admit something, I have a slightly better appreciation for That 90s Show now that I get as much of the references as I do, but it's still an enormous headache and a story that the show has ignored since the fan backlash. This wasn't a review of it as much as a survey of how much it got right and how much it got wrong. I know since this episode aired, everyone has snarked about how they're eventually gonna do a flashback to the 2000s or even later, rendering this even more outdated than it already is. But I say bring it on! Have young Homer watching Family Guy and young Marge using MySpace. Fill the credits with Disney Channel music and give all the background characters Spider-Pig lunchboxes. Challenge accepted, Season 36 Simpsons writers?
I wasn't trying to steal your watch. I was just coming on to you.